we sought to set ambitious climate targets globally. And these are the efforts that ultimately led to the Paris Agreement, an agreement that has the potential to at least delay and potentially avoid some of the worst consequences of climate change. Now, obviously, we're in an unusual time where the United States is now the only nation on Earth that does not belong to the Paris Agreement, and that's a difficult position to defend. But the good news is that the Paris Agreement was never going to solve the climate crisis on its own. It was going to be up to all of us. Presidents, national governments can set goals and priorities. We can make sure that there are investments in the research that's required to ramp up the discovery of new energy sources. We have the ability to set standards around which markets can respond and create incentives for the kinds of actions that are taken, but ultimately the work is done on the ground. Ultimately, the work is up to each of us, wherever we have some impact, wherever we have some influence. And that's why America's pledge on climate is so important. It's about more than living up to our responsibilities on the world stage. It's about keeping our word on the world stage. And cities and states and businesses and universities and nonprofits have emerged as the new face of American leadership on climate change. So, a statistic that I think you're familiar with, so far those who've joined America's pledge represent half our population and half of our economy. And if all those who were part of America's pledge were its own country, it would be the third largest in the world. What amazing leadership and amazing potential that holds. Our biggest cities have now adopted more sustainable building and transportation policies. Some of our biggest companies have set more ambitious renewable energy targets than even we set while I was president. Our power sector is still on track to meet the more ambitious emissions targets set a few years ago. I know that some mayors, like Rahm, have gone even farther by signing the Chicago Climate Charter, which is a commitment to reduce carbons in line with the Paris Agreement, take aggressive action on climate, and to plan for the realities that even if we get out ahead of this thing, we can no longer avoid. And that's a powerful signal to the world. That's what leadership means, and it will make a difference. So the bottom line is, I want to thank you and I want to encourage you. Sheltering future generations from the ravages of climate change should be something of an obsession for us. And Americans should make it a prerequisite for the vote of anybody in elected office that they're paying attention to it. We live at a time where everything is contested. And so often, because of the splintering of our media, it is possible to only occupy a world in which the facts that come in conform to your pre-existing conceptions. And that's a challenge, particularly for democracies, because democracy is premised on the idea that we can disagree, but there is a objective reality out there. There are certain facts that are not subject to opinion and debate. And we may disagree on how we can solve a problem, but at least we can agree that there is a problem. And in this environment right now, I think it's easy sometimes to feel discouraged and to feel as if people are talking past each other. But this is where the particular talents of mayors come in. Because, first of all, you're used to dealing with folks who can sometimes be unreasonable. But Second of all, as I said at the beginning, you're accustomed, regardless of your party, regardless of how you came to occupy the office, you're accustomed to having to deal with the realities that are in front of you and to take action, not just talk about it. And people will hold you accountable and expect that you're actually going to perform. And there's no place in which that's going to be more important than on this generational issue. Ram and I were talking before we came out, and we have children who aren't so young anymore. They're entering into young adulthood. And we're both getting to the age, although we like to think that we're still fit and haven't slipped, where you become aware of your mortality. And the thing that you want to make sure of, the thing that is more important now than anything else, in a way that wasn't true even 15 or 20 or 30 years ago when you thought you had forever, the thing you want to make sure of is that your kids and their kids are going to be okay. And the one thing that might make it not okay for them is this. We can't protect our children or our grandkids from heartbreak or mistakes or the vicissitudes of life. They're going to have their own challenges and their own struggles, and as long as we're around, we want to help them when we can, but we know that's going to happen. That's the nature of human fate. But this is something we can do something about. And I'm hoping that as a consequence of you seeing meaningful impacts in your own cities and you realizing that you're part of a broader movement, that inspires you to bolder and bolder work. And that in turn, I think, can inspire a country. And that will inspire the world. So thank you very much for your outstanding work. God bless you. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.